We're knuckleheads. We're knuckle draggers. We're boneheads. Marine Corps, we call them jarheads. That's really what almost most men are. And we always are on two opposite extreme ends of the spectrum. And both of those opposite ends are both equally dangerous to your business, to your relationships, even to your fitness. And we're going to break it down here on the...
Ain't no motherfucker in this world could do it like me. Open up your eyes and insert a little rising. You don't have to love me, you don't have to like me. Got enough love in myself, in my psyche. You should have the same in your brain nightly. If you wanna taste, bitch, you can fucking try me. If you wanna hate, bitch, you know where to find me. And if you...
What's up, freaks? Welcome to another episode of the Steve Eckert Show podcast. And today we are exploring the opposite extreme ends of the spectrum of masculinity, the spectrum of man, the different opposite extreme ends. Because here's what happens as men. We're knuckleheads. We're knuckle draggers. We're boneheads. Marine Corps, we call them jarheads. That's really what almost most men are. And we always are on two opposite extreme ends of the spectrum. And both of those opposite ends are both equally dangerous to your business, to your relationships, even to your fitness. And we're going to break it down here on the Steve Eckert Show podcast. But first, go down below, check out the Freak Mode 40. It is a full, free 40-day daily discipline and habit challenge. Completely, absolutely free course, $200 course. You get access to it immediately for free starting today, just for being a viewer and listener of the Steve Eckert Show podcast. So check that out. So let's get into this spectrum of masculinity, of manhood, of fatherhood, really. The spectrum of fatherhood. First, ask yourself, where have you been operating on one extreme end of the spectrum or another? And then this is in all areas of life. And then, so think of side A and the opposite side of that side, freaking Z. You're either doing A or a Z when you should be somewhere, maybe not 50%, somewhere leaning towards one of those sides, but not extreme ends of one of those sides. So where in that spectrum are you right now? And where do you believe you should be for that situation or that whatever relationship, scenario, or area of life? Also, where have you been too rigid, meaning you're too stiff, so you're stuck on either end of those spectrums? And you need to, all right, and we're going to go through examples here in a second. So let's start with feeler and thinker. You could be, as a man, a feeler or a thinker. The problem with men, we go to far end of either end of that spectrum where everything is so overly emotional and you're just a little softy or whatever else because you think you're supposed to be showing your feminine side and all this other stuff, and you're supposed to show your feelings and be vulnerable and all this stuff, and you go overboard onto the feeler side. Or you go overboard, the complete opposite end of the spectrum, over to the thinker side. And now you're just overthinking shit. You're just a thinker. You're a fucking robot. You don't give a fuck about anyone else. You have zero empathy, zero compassion, and whatever else, zero feelings. So you could see how both extreme ends of that spectrum are equally dangerous. Now, I'm not saying you need to be right at 50%. Probably as a man, you're going to be closer towards one end or the other, not too far towards it, but somewhere on that side of the 50% line, the halfway, the midway mark. So think of it like if 50% is even and feelers are thinkers here and feelers here. I would think I'm going to be somewhere 70 to 80% towards the thinker side, but not such a thinker where you're just have zero empathy or compassion or feeling. So that's what we're talking about, not being stuck on either end of that spectrum. So picture that as like a slide, a straight line with two big dots on each end. One is one end of the spectrum. One is a complete extreme polar opposite of that end of that other category. And then there's a 50% line, and kind of think of where are you right now on that spectrum? Put a line, put a marker on it. And where do you think you should be for your goal, for the lifestyle you want to live, for your character, for what you believe is the right place for you as a man between feeler and thinker? And then that's just a feeler and thinker. And then I want you to think about other places that men, we did a whole episode on selfish versus selfless. And men fall themselves on opposite equal ends of that spectrum, which is both equally dangerous. So selfish versus selfless. Selfish meaning you're only taking care of yourself. Selfless is meaning you're neglecting yourself and only taking care of other people. Obviously, both of those are toxic or whatever. Then think of things you can control versus you can't control. In the project, we call it a savage servant also. A savage servant, you could be, if you're too far on the end of savage or too far on the end of servant, both of those are equally dangerous. Where do you see the ideal version of yourself, the best version of yourself, according to how you do things? Where would you fall on that scale of a savage servant? Even put it into physical training terms, into the gym. If you do only strength training all the time, you're going to be this big meathead who can't even walk up a fucking flight of stairs without sucking wind and need to take a 10-minute break. But you also don't want to be on the opposite end of the spectrum where all you're doing is running freaking marathons and you're this skinny fat dude who can't even carry their kids up a flight out of a burning building, and you got your wife that has to carry you out because you're too freaking weak and frail. You don't want your wife carrying you out of a burning building. That is not recommended. So you do want strength, but you also do want endurance, but you don't want to be on either opposite end of that spectrum. So where do you fall? Where do you want to be on that spectrum? Where do you think you as a man should be? And we're all different, so it's not saying you have to be the same as me or the same as Arnold Schwarzenegger or some shit, but pick a spot where you think you would be on that spectrum between strength and endurance. Same thing for when it comes to the gym. Think of physique, meaning how you look compared to function, about how you actually move and your strength and your athleticism and flexibility, or just how you look and it's just all puffed full of hot air. You don't want to be on either end of that spectrum. You don't want to be just only functional where you look like a schlub, probably. You want to still look pretty good, but effective and functional. So where do you think you should be on those opposite ends of that spectrum? Think about fighting, where you could say, all right, striking and grappling. You don't want to be just a striker and only train that action. You come across a grappler, you're freaking choked out. But you don't want to be just a grappler, because if you can't get the thing to the ground and whatever else, you're just going to get your face punched in. Where's the blend? The word here we're looking for is, you could say blend or mix or balance, but I like the word symmetry. Where is the moment of symmetry on that timeline between the two extreme ends of the spectrum, according to the 50% line? Where is your optimal symmetry as a man, as a father, as a husband in all these areas? Think of in parenthood. You could be just a parent and a friend. Should you just be your kid's friend only and not even be a parent? Or should you just be a Nazi little parent, a dictator? Where's the spot of symmetry? Where is the symmetrical point on that line? Think of times when you should shut up, times when you should speak up. Where's the spot on the line? Think about when to fight, when to flee, when to hold them, when to fold them. Shit, war and peace. You can't always be at peace. You got to be prepared for war, but you don't want to be always at war, because you're eventually just going to get wiped out and exhausted. So where on the line should be between war and peace? Between being a fighter, a lover, being emotional and rational. There's a huge one. Kind of goes with the feeler and thinker. Emotional and rational. Where on that timeline is the symmetrical sweet spot? That's what I think I'd like to call it. Just came with that just now. The symmetric, and I'm writing that down, learning here with you. Where is that symmetrical sweet spot on that timeline, on the spectrum? Symmetrical sweet spot of the spectrum. Look at that. Look at the shit we're just coming up with together. That's how shit works. Got to get in the game and just take action and start doing shit, and it just pops out. Think about the difference between discipline and motivation. Yes, you need discipline. Yes, you need motivation. But if you have only motivation and don't rely on discipline, it's not going to work. But if you're only thinking you have discipline and not have any motivation, a motivation is a motive for action. You definitely need some of that. Where do you fall on that symmetrical sweet spot of the spectrum for between discipline and motivation? How about kindness and weakness? Or Mr. Nice Guy and an asshole. You don't want to be just a Mr. Nice Guy that gets walked all over, or just a pure asshole that's not obviously just as equal. The asshole is equally dangerous and equally toxic as the Mr. Nice Guy. Sometimes a nice guy's a bigger fucking asshole because he's a fucking fraud. Think of introvert versus extrovert, talking versus listening, thinking versus acting, saying versus doing. These all kind of fall. Think about it. You could be here all day and like almost craft the ideal version of yourself, the Superman that you're going to create, the super husband, the super father, the Superman that has this symmetrical sweet spot on this spectrum figured out for all these different categories that I'm giving you. We're going through this fast, and these sound like simple, like think versus act, sure. Talk versus listen, say versus do. But when you start plugging where you should be on there and then you start living that out and living that sweet spot, that's fucking power. That is a superpower. That is a fucking superpower. That sweet spot is a superpower. I'm taking fucking notes on my own shit here. Some cool shit right there. Taking notes and learning on my own shit. Think about the dreamer versus just being realistic. The person who just dreams and it's just as wild and over the top and way too out there versus the person who's just too realistic and stuck on this side. Or the person who's positive versus the person who's risk averse. We said the gym stuff already, but on the gym, strength and cardio, kind of those would be two. It just popped in my head. Or freedom, the way you lead, a way of freedom, just letting anyone run, doing whatever they want to do versus a dictator who's just a what's it called? A freaking just on people's ass all the time, micromanager, strict and rigid versus that loose freedom. In life, think of a spender versus a saver, a giver versus a taker. Think about what you want versus what you need. How about that? Some of these I'm popping up in my head. Some of these were prepared, I have written down, but half of these as we're talking, they're just popping up into my head. That's the freaking awesome thing about this personal development thing. This journey of manhood and fatherhood and self-mastery is the study, the learning, the training. It force multiplies and creates this whole new thing you never even knew existed. How what you want versus what you need. Holy shit. Where are you on that spectrum right now? Maybe you're only getting what you need, but nothing of what you want. Or maybe where are you on that spectrum? Where are you now? Put that in fucking red. And then what is the sweet spot where you want to be? Put that in green. And make that a visual. Like, think about that. Freaking want versus need. I think you get the point. We're going to leave it with that on the want versus the need. But the point here is you need to be well-rounded. You need to be ready for anything. One of my sayings and all the core values of every business I have is if you're always on your A game, you never have to get on your A game. And if you are finding this symmetrical sweet spot on the spectrum, you're going to have a superpower. You will be ready for everything and you will always be on your A game. You will be a super freaking father and a super man. If you just hold that freaking line, I want you to visualize that, picture it. Picture, again, let's say thinker or feeler over here, thinker over here. Just two big black dots. Extreme ends of the spectrum. Put a line in the middle, 50%. Put a red X where you are right now, which might not be optimal. Put a green check mark about where you think the ideal symmetrical sweet spot is on that spectrum. And circle it because that's where your fucking superpowers are in all these different categories. I'll put a text of all those in it. You could just review the text instead of hearing me just babble them. I'll put them in the show notes down below. And also don't forget down below to check out the Freak Mode 40, the 40-day daily discipline habit and accountability challenge, completely free, $200 course, a gift for you for just being a listener of the Steve Eckert Show podcast. Go and click the link down below right now. But then also I want you to put in the comments down below. Which of these spectrums that I mentioned, where are you on them? And where do you want to be? What's the difference about where you are and where you want to be? Which ones really stood out for you? Which ones clicked? Which ones make sense? And which ones are you going to work on first to create that super power and Superman version of yourself as a husband, as a father, as a leader, and as a man? Find that symmetrical sweet spot on the spectrum. Put the comments down below what your thoughts are on this. And I will see you next time on the Steve Eckert Show podcast. And in case no one told you yet today, you are fucking awesome. No excuses.